So, for the first research article, it is called The Impact of Digital Distraction on Lecture Note Taking and Student Learning. And it can be seen that college students often succumb to digital distractions, as 70 to 90% regularly text during class and receive up to 15 to 20 text messages during this period. We could also see that there are two forms of note taking. So, one being longhand, in which you are note taking via pen, paper, or pencil and paper, and then the other one is using a laptop. And it can be seen that taking notes on a laptop, that 60% of students who use it often take 40% of their class time for off-task purposes, and that digital distractions can also be linked to a reduction in lecture note taking and learning when notes are being taken from the longhand method as well. So there is basically this research that is conducted to see how digital distraction and note taking, whether it's from the laptop or from the longhand method, interact to influence quality and quantity of student notes, as well as their learning from the lecture lessons. So for the two methods, the first one we have is called longhand. This helps to enforce the information to our memory and generate external records of the lecture info. This is also what we call the paraphrase method, in which we have to shorten what is being obtained in our notes, as it is harder for us to keep up in the lectures while we're writing. And it's also seen that texters using this method record 35 to 60% fewer complete lecture notes than those who don't text with this method. And next we have those who use laptops, who have an advantage over longhand note takers in terms of words and complete text ideas that they can have in their notes due to the ability to type faster. We refer to this as the verbatim method, so that they can write down what they see and they hear, and that they'll have more time to get more notes down just due to being able to text instead of write. So the research assignment and hypothesis for this is to examine the extent to which students record incomplete lecture ideas into notes while being distracted on digital devices. And so the first hypothesis we have is that digital distractions will be more of a consequence for note takers' quantity and quality using longhand method due to disadvantage of speed of the laptop. And the second hypothesis is the proportion of incomplete ideas stored in the student notes will be associated with the post-test achievement due to lower external storage values of the notes from the laptop. And this method is going to be conducted by having 100 undergrad students, 50% using laptops while texting, 50% using laptops not texting, 50% using notes while texting, and then 50% doing the notes while not texting. And so they're going to watch a 15-minute lecture video, and those who are associated with the texting groups will be sent distractions every 40 seconds. So from within these distractions, they have to solve 18 item words and have 2 minutes to complete it. So an example could be trying to figure out the missing letters to a word, and then having to only have 2 minutes to complete and figure out the word while they're trying to take notes for the lectures. So this is just a look at the demographic table of the participants. We see that majority of the participants are white, and we have 55% underclassmen, 60% female students, 66% with a GPA of 3.0 and higher. And just looking at it, we can see that majority are doing the longhand texting method, while those doing longhand non-texting are on the lower side of the spectrum. So in terms of the data analysis and results, we see that the video has approximately 143 lecture ideas and 22 main ideas. The notes are being analyzed based on main topics, supporting details and examples. And from the results, we can see that the notes scored were based on word count, complete and incomplete main ideas and topics, and supporting details and examples, note-taking efficiency, and images. So with the laptop, we see that more words were put down. However, they were hindered by phone distractions, and longhand takes fewer lecture ideas into notes advantage over laptop users because they have the ability to store images, which is contrary to the hypothesis 2, which there's actually a positive correlation with post-test scores due to the ability of having images being stored in their notes, where laptop users did not have images stored. So, in conclusion, we can see that those texting obviously had lower scores, but those with computers who were texting had the lowest scores of them all because not only were they distracted from their lecture notes, they also were unable to produce images that could help with their notes as well, and ultimately led them to having the lowest scores. And then just looking at the chart, this is just the post-test scores. So we see that those who were distracted and on the laptop had lower scores than those undistracted longhand. And it just has a list of the total words, complete ideas, and main topics that each did, depending on what category they were in. So for the second research article, this is titled Smartphone Convenience Acting as Motivational Pull for Engagement, Constant Multitasking, and Attention Loss. We can see that students use smartphones for more than 25% of class time, a distraction coming in every 3 to 4 minutes, and can only focus on a task for 3 to 5 minutes at a time. Distraction can be caused from FOMO, which is an acronym standing for fear of missing out, as we typically want to be present in positive experiences happening in other people's lives. We also see how there's a correlation for stress, anxiety, the need for emotional regulation, and problematic use when it comes to over access to social media and smartphone use. And it was thought that through mindfulness and self-monitoring that it could lead to self-awareness and also an increase in mood. And so the research is using social media intervention through different apps to lower rates of digital distraction and also increase mood. So there was 3 hypotheses for this design and this research. So the first one is students with intervention would report lower rates of smartphone distraction, social media duration, impulsivity, stress, and fear of missing out. The second is that high distractors versus low distractors would show reduction in distraction and improvement in outcomes. And the third would be moderate and mindful attention and smartphone distraction would increase depending to see if the apps would work or not. So the design is that for 10 days there would be 3 apps, Antisocial, Headspace, and Pacifica, that would basically assess the smartphone use, mindfulness, and track mood and the impact of stress. And so we see that we have 261 participants that joined, 47 male, 214 female, ranging from the ages of 18 to 32. And so they would be asked questions such as how many hours on social media do you spend? And all these questions would be based on different scales. So we see the smartphone distraction scale, which is a 16 Likert type item attention, to where we test impulsiveness and emotional regulation. So 1 would be almost never, and 5 would be most always. Then we have the mindful attention awareness scale with 15 items assessing tendency to be mindful, and it ranges from 1 through 6. Next is the emotional self-awareness, where it recognizes and identifies decision making, and so it's from 0 to 4, and it would be strongly disagree or agree. The last one we have would be perceived stress scale with unpredictability and uncontrollability. 10 items and ranges from 0, which would be never, to 4 is often. An example would be in the last month, how often have you felt unable to control important things in your life? And they also have 1 item from the anxiety disorder scale. So it would test how high you are on the scale. If you have a score of 5, you would be mild, 10 would be moderate, and 15 would be severe. So the intervention, so antisocial would see how long you have been on your phone, the screen time to monitor digital use, and voluntary self-exclusion. The second would be Headspace, which is monitoring mindfulness, and third would be Pacifica with word tracking and monitoring emotional state, which will enhance your awareness. So for the results and the conclusion, we can see that post-test scores significantly lowered for anxiety, fear of missing out, and stress. Practicing mindfulness and monitoring media leads to behavior changes with less distraction and increased self-awareness. Students with intervention seen reduction in distraction and increase in mindful attention and self-awareness. And we can see that through these apps that being conscious about our use on our phones and not being so dependent on them can actually lead us to being in greater moods, and just change our overall behaviors, and can make us happier in not focusing so much on the social media world.